Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Would love to hear your sentiments around the budget speech yesterday. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. Are you relatively happy? I know when we were speaking to some financial analysts yesterday, they were all calling for a budget that speaks to the people. And I wonder if this is, in fact, such a budget that speaks to the people. A lot of folks also bringing up the issue of creeping taxes, saying that it might not be overt, but it is there. And I guess that could speak to things like the fuel levy, for instance, that was increased. And we know when the fuel levies and such things get increased, ultimately those costs get passed on onto the consumer. Roxanna Naidoo joins us now, Head of Global Strategy at Latita Africa. How are you doing this afternoon, Roxanne? Roxanna.
Very well, thank you. How are you doing, Bridget?
I'm great. Thank you so much, and thank you for the time. Let's perhaps start there, because a lot of the analysts that we had during the duration of the station's programming yesterday were calling for a budget that ultimately speaks to the people, saying that, perhaps for the first time in a long time, the environment is ripe for the minister to do good by taxpayers. Is that what we saw from Budget Speech 2026?
I would think so, Bridget. I think, and yes, let's speak to the practicalities on what the average taxpayer can take away from that. I think we've seen some very positive things after a very long time in our budget this year, after the hiccups from last year as well. And the simple things that everyday taxpayers should be focusing on is, for example, your tax-free savings contribution limit that has now increased. A lot of people have these tax-free saving accounts. Then your personal tax brackets and rebates have now been adjusted for inflation. So that helps reduce bracket creep, and it protects the take-home pay of your average salary owner. Even your donations tax exemptions have increased, so you can now donate up to 150,000 Rand per year tax-free. And then for the older generation, your retirement fund deduction cap has increased. So you can now deduct up to 430,000 Rand per year versus previously it was 350,000. So practically, we see government thinking about the average taxpayer and making those adjustments to ease, the tax relief for your average taxpayer.
I think for us, those who are trying to understand the budget, right, sometimes when we listen to the budget speech, we hear all the numbers and we hear all the promises. And I think a lot of listeners just want to know, bottom line, does this mean I'm able to perhaps in a few years retire a little bit more comfortably? And does this mean that perhaps in the immediate I'm able to take care of my family and put more food in the grocery basket at the end of the month, and maybe even ease some of those household constraints that have heavied upon us over past years?
It's a very good question. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are talking about bracket creep. And, it's something very scary, and a lot of people don't understand how that works. So let's look at it as simple terms with your everyday household. Bracket creep is basically a silent tax increase. Imagine your salary goes up a little just to keep up with prices, but you're not truly better off. If the tax brackets don't move, part of that inflation increase can push you into paying a higher portion of tax. So you end up paying more tax even though your real-life buying power did not improve in any way. So that is why inflation adjustments matter so much. They stop the tax system from quietly taking more every year without Parliament ever announcing a new tax rate. Now, what real taxpayers want to know now is, will people actually feel this in their monthly paycheck, So some people will feel it, but I want to manage expectations there. It's not going to feel like a bonus, that it's automatically going to get better overnight. It's more like preventing a slow leakage. many taxpayers will see that their PAYE does not climb as aggressively as it would have without the inflation adjustments. So the best way I can explain it, if you were already struggling, this does not suddenly make life easy, but it can stop things from getting worse purely because of how the tax tables work. So in an environment where every rand now matters, preventing that creep is still meaningful to your everyday taxpayer.
Got you. And yesterday, Minister Godongwane noted that over the past 3 years, South Africa's tax system demonstrated resilience despite a slow economic growth. What does that mean to us trying to understand?
Well, for me, that boils down to what we expected from last year versus what we got this year, specifically on that 2% VAT increase that was kind of, I don't want to use the word threatened, but hovered over us, loomed over us during the course of last year. And a lot of, speculation happened around that. And thankfully, this year, we see that those increases didn't happen. There was no VAT increases. So for us, that is a good thing that we did not see any of those VAT increases. If you look at it, VAT is one of the most powerful ways government can raise revenue because almost everyone pays it when they buy goods and services. That's exactly why it's so sensitive. So if VAT increases, the impact is immediate and it's broad. It shows up in the prices everywhere. So by keeping that VAT unchanged, government has avoided a direct or immediate hit to the household budgets. And that's the key point. Even if you don't follow tax policies, you would feel that VAT increase quickly through higher costs. So keeping it steady is effectively saying that we're not adding another cost of living shock right now. So over the 3 years, we've managed to obtain that stability.
Was there any concession, Roxanna, that was perhaps provided for things like infrastructure? We always talk about things like skills development. We always tend to talk about, and whilst we focused on infrastructure, we know before the budget speech, the day before, there was a State of the Province address in Johannesburg. And Premier Lesufi is faced with a predicament here because we have a water crisis. And as much as the president has put together that task team, have they allocated any funds and resource to ensure that this water crisis is attended to quick, fast, and in a hurry?
I think that's so important. And I think us as a tax advisory firm is constantly advocating for these initiatives in the country as well. As a tax firm, we ourselves have identified, these tax leakages, and it's something we want to be very vocal about. I mean, there were 3 specific tax leakages that lended to this, where we see taxpayers paying their taxes diligently, but is it now actually, mirrored in the actual outcome? Are we seeing those roads getting fixed? Are we seeing education or implementing further initiatives for education? And a simple one, even when it comes to the revenue that we're currently protecting. Our stance is that government must protect revenue, we know that, but not by shocking compliant businesses with unclear rules. If SARS introduces, for example, they're looking at, new digital reporting, it needs to be phased in clearly. And at the same time, even when it's fixing old custom rules, we're looking at how they do that. It needs to be structured. Give a plan that has a come clean or a voluntary disclosure plan for that. Look at your stopping illicit tobacco, for example. Those are things that are constant leakages within South Africa. I think we're still focused on looking at how we leverage increased tax collections and always looking at aggressive tax collections. But we failed to look at the tax leakages that should also be managed to take that burden off your average taxpayer.
Roxanna, thank you so much for the time. We have to leave it there for this afternoon, but we welcome you unpacking for us what exactly Budget Speech 2026 means to each one of us and each one of our households. That was Roxanna Naidoo, Head of Global Strategy at Latita Africa.